With loads of business advice flooding the industry, it has never been harder to see the path to success. And you can't take action if you don't have clarity. Get clear on the actionable tips and strategies that will help to scale your business here on Masters in Clarity, the podcast that brings you clarity around messaging, business growth, digital marketing, personal development, and the business owner's journey to success. Let's join our guide, the master of turning clarity into action and lasting impact, Dolores Hirschman.
I'm so excited to bring back my friend and colleague, Mia Moran. Mia is a mom of 3 and coach who has struck her perfect balance between motherhood, wellness, and work. She supports high-achieving female entrepreneurs who are overwhelmed with the life and wellness pieces and find their version of balance. She's the host of the Plan Simple podcast, best-selling author of Plan Simple Meals, and creator of the Flow Planning Method, the Flow Planner, and Flow 365. I've had Mia in my podcast before. We've known each other actually for almost 10 years. We're good friends. We both live in Massachusetts. But what I want to bring Mia for is to have this conversation about what is productivity and what does this look like? What does it look like to have our own version of productivity? Not a shoot of what we need to do, but what is it that we're called to do? So listen up.
When was the last time we had lunch? It was like a year, 2 years. Have I seen you since COVID?
We might not have seen each other in person since COVID.
This
I feel like we've had some long Zoom conversations at some point, like especially when I was figuring out college. But yeah, no.
Yeah. So here we are. This is not our first rodeo. It's not our first interview. I think you've been in my podcast before. I've been in your podcast a few times, but catch me up, Mia. So what are you working on? I know a lot of changes at home. You have your oldest child is off to college, and that kind of probably, create a new reality. I know you work a lot with moms and with women and managing time and projects and dreams. So catch me up.
All right. So what's happening? So he did go off to college. And by the way, that was very sad. And I didn't realize how much time being sad would take. But I am now on the other side of that. And I realized that it did take some time. So I'm glad I was sort of aware. So we are doing a lot of the same, just at a deeper, like more resource kind of level. So I kind of like to think that what we're doing is kind of like the gym of, well, let's call it the Zen gym, like the gym that has good yoga classes version of productivity, and really looking at what it looks like to be productive as a woman. So I don't want to confuse these two words, because really what we're looking at is feminine productivity, which is not exclusively for women. I think that looking at the more feminine side of what that even is pertains to both men and women. But really diving into what that means and how that means we're showing up in the day-to-day.
And, we're going to dive right into how do we get here. But before we do that, I wanted to say that we're not talking about getting everything fit into the day. We're not talking about burning yourself until the to-do list is done. We're talking about a whole lot of different level of productivity. And a lot of elements that you wouldn't always put into productivity, but I know you, Mia, bring, you cook.
Including sleep. Sleep is one of the most productive
and joy and probably lunar rhythms. I don't know. Yes. I'm guessing.
Yes.
Knowing you. And maybe some oils and bath salts. So how did we get here to be focusing, to be the expert, to be creating this space for the conversation of productivity among women?
So I've been doing like calendars for a long time, which my brother reminded me of the other day. He's like, you used to make calendars when we were like 8. So I think I've been onto this problem for some time. But in this particular iteration, it really actually came from a health transformation myself, and which led to, as it does with us entrepreneurs, a book and a book tour and meeting a lot of women and talking about the food piece. And realizing that that wasn't the problem that I was here to solve. And
we didn't have a food issue. We had a I don't have time to cook issue.
Exactly. And so did like the hundreds of women I was meeting across the country. Right. And so I would end up in these rooms where I felt like people knew more than I did about what one should eat. And yet they weren't. And they weren't able to make time. And I'm talking about like nutritionists and health coaches. And I was just like, I was so intimidated sometimes at the rooms that I was walking into, but I'm like, but no one's doing it. And why is that? And how can we shift this a little bit and show up to the lives that like we know we want to show up to? And in fact, many of the people who I was talking to were teaching others how to show up to that life.
But not
so why can't we all make time for it?
So how do we make time?
By really planning from the inside out and getting rid of all the things that we thought we were supposed to have, which we all have a point where we're like, oh, like I got those things and it's still not quite working how I thought. It doesn't quite feel how I thought it would. So it's a bit about the part that makes it feminine is a bit about starting from the intuition. And so I like to think of it kind of circular because many of us are so busy that we're never quiet. Maybe we sleep, but we like, you know, if you've ever had one of those days where it's like been so much that you like fall asleep in your clothes that you just had dinner in, right? Like, so we fall asleep. And so that's not, to me, that's not like conscious, like quiet time. And then we wake up and like we open our phones and we're checking our email and we're like back in the rat race. And then there's all these things that are happening almost to us. And we just don't create the quiet time to really understand what it is that we're meant to be here doing. And so there's this thing at the beginning that's this dance between, well, one of the first steps is to make the time so that there's quiet. And then once you have that time, really learning how to go through a process of following through what's like, oh my gosh, I have to do this. And I mean, you're such a good example of that because you've had so many businesses where you're like, oh my gosh, I have to do this. And that's just you probably going on a walk or taking a shower or pausing for 10 minutes and getting this idea that you're like, oh my gosh, I have to do this. That's all it is.
I love that. You know, I've been doing a lot of research, I have to catch up. There's a lot going on my end, but one of my companies is I have a team of 30. And one of the things that we've been switching lately, we have daily check-ins, performance conversations or performance check-in moments. And we have shifted from focusing on the number and how many did you do and how much did you do today to spending 30 minutes together, sharing personal wins, sharing moments of joy, sharing words of wisdom, and we've outperformed ourselves in the last 2 months.
Oh my God, that's amazing. I love
We've been doing this for 3 months now.
I love that story.
And we touched on the number like for a minute, but we literally spend our time being with each other, seeing each other, and celebrating each other. So translate that to ourselves. We don't spend enough time being with ourselves, seeing ourselves, and celebrating ourselves.
Absolutely.
But how do we stop?
You mean in order to be able to do that?
Yeah, because I know that when I'm on the go, I can't stop. Like I'm like, okay, it's one thing to the next.
Well, so I think it's the same thing as doing something. Like it's the same quality. And this does dovetail into the process that we take people through. So when you decide that you want to do anything, so whether that's go on the next project or that you really want to take the time for being, like you have to be the one to make that choice. I can't tell you that this is, I can, yell, which I feel like I do from the rooftops, that I really do think this is the secret that we're missing is that we're just going too fast and we need to pause. And you also have to really be able to find that yourself and like know that that's what you want to do. But when you do that, the biggest thing that I think that the thing that's genius about what you're doing with your team actually is that you're doing it together. Because I think that one of the things that we do in anything that we decide, a lot of times as women, is that we're just going to go figure it out ourselves because that must be what we're supposed to do. And so I think sometimes support is the missing piece in that. And just even finding one person who's committed to also finding quiet. And maybe it's just that you sit with them for, an hour a day, or you go pay for a class, like a yoga class or meditation class where they make you sit for an hour a day, or just something where you're slowing yourself down in a conscious, somewhat awake state. It doesn't have to be complicated and it doesn't have to be an hour, but you do have to pause, and you do have to just become like the noticer of your brain and really just see the thoughts and let them pass through, and just quieting your whole system down. Because there's a lot of people get frustrated with the idea, because I'm not saying sit down and meditate by any means, but a lot of people get frustrated with quiet because our minds are still racing, and sometimes our bodies are even still racing. And so you do need some tools to just be able to ground yourself in that moment.
It takes practice, and
it definitely takes
guidance.
Practice.
And I know you have a community. We're going to talk about that in a minute, around helping women do that. But before we go there, let me ask, there's so much judgment in not doing.
I know. That's a big problem.
And I think it's an external and an internal problem, because when you could say, I have 4 children. It's been very busy in this house. And now I have 1 baby left in the house, and the baby will be 17 tomorrow. There's a lot of doing that I no longer need to do. If I don't do laundry for 5 days, it doesn't matter. It's 3 of us. We can always find another pair of pants, right? But there's so much in me, the external pressure of doing, you could say that in my house has gone down dramatically, but I can't stop. Laundry has to be done and folded by tonight, or else what? I don't know. How do we?
Well, let's use laundry as an example, because it's actually a really great example. So, because often I use dishes because people often ask me about the kitchen, but I mean, one could fold laundry totally stressed out. And it's that thing that's crammed in your to-do list, and you have 10 minutes and you're just trying to do it because you're supposed to, because you're a woman and someone said that this is
your mother-in-law will come and make and take inspect, right?
Yeah, 100%. You're going to be judged if it's not done totally correctly, and everything's not KonMari'd into your drawers in the perfect little roll,
color coded.
Yes, exactly. So that's one energy that you could fold the basket of clothes, or you could use that time that it takes to just slow down and to just be with the clothes and fold the clothes and
put some
get out of
music.
your head. Yeah. And so I think with everything, it's a choice. And this is the thing that I've found over and over, because what we're doing in our, when I'm working with people, is we're really getting under well, why isn't that thing happening? Or how could you look at this differently? Or why is it taking that long when you wanted it to take this long? So what's going on? And a lot of times it really is what we bring to it, right? So the thing is if we spend an hour, so even the act of planning can calm us down, because once we get everything out of our head and onto paper and we can see it, for a lot of people, that is something that is a calming activity. So it doesn't have to be meditation, or you could go for a run or whatever, but something that sort of grounds you and calms you down. And then you go write a hard email that you've been meaning to write, and you haven't done it for whatever reason because you're not finding the right words. So if you are calm when you do that, you'll probably write it. You will perceive that you write it quicker. That thing will feel more easeful. If you are stressed out and you have an hour to get this email off because you've promised it to somebody to get them, and you're, strung out and you've just done the wash, you've just folded all the clothes, it's just going to be a different experience. And by the end of the day, your whole system feels differently when we pile these things up over and over again. So at some level, taking that time off saves you time.
So I love that, because here's what we're talking about is less about what we do or don't do, but it's about who we're being at every moment of the doing or not doing.
Yeah.
Because
And the
we
energy.
could say,
Yeah.
I'm going to, Mia says I'm going to meditate or whatever. Mia doesn't say we have to meditate, but I could get someone's advice to slow down and force myself to slow down and make that moment so unproductive.
Yeah.
Even if I stop the movement, even if I stop the action. Or I can continue with my action, but shift my inside in how I perceive or experience myself in that action. And in that way, kind of, what it makes me think of, Mia, is the new bikes the bikes that you can bike and you can charge as you bike.
Oh, so they're like electric?
It's like electric bike, or I don't know how.
Yeah. So you're feeding them as you bike.
You're feeding them, but
Yeah.
you're not plug it in and stopped. Like there's a way that you bike and then you let go and you're still riding, but it's feeding. I think what you're talking about, oh, I got chills. You started your journey as feeding people healthier.
I like that.
And now you've taken your work towards feeding ourselves.
Yeah.
Feeding ourselves with peace of mind and balance.
Yeah.
Just by managing our energy and where we put our mind and how we go about our everyday.
Yeah. Yeah. And what you just said about the energy, like that's another way to look at it. So like we think that productivity is about time management. And if we just start to shift into making it about energy management, then you can start to see how, yes, I do need to write that sales page, but also I need to come at it with the right energy or I'm not going to sell. And in order to do that, it's not only about writing, it's about what I had for lunch and that I feel really good and that I am not worrying about something in some other part of my life. Right. And so we're spending that time managing our energy instead of our time.
I love that. So talk to me about how you work with people. How do you take women on a journey?
Yeah. So I, again, believe that we have to take that personal responsibility to like want to make some change. And we operate pretty broadly because we work with people who work. So mostly entrepreneurs, but some people who also have jobs, women. And we're looking at all the different areas of your life and how they go together. Because I mean, the end goal is that you're doing your work well, I suppose, but that doesn't normally go well for women unless they're feeling good at home and in their relationships. And if they're a mom with their kids and in their bodies and all, there's so many different, and in their spiritual practices and in all the different aspects of their life. So I don't believe that we can plan for how we're going to do our work if we haven't thought holistically about all those different things. So that's what we're doing. So usually someone comes in because they've decided some piece of that needs to change, and then we sort of shift all of it. But the idea is that we have to decide we need to change, but then we don't have to do it alone. And there's different parts of the process that are all benefited by being in group. So we run retreats around setting 90-day goals. We have, as part of this sort of like gym membership type thing, we have Monday calls all day long so that people can come in and just really be heard, just like your team, about what 3 things they're committed to doing that week and get any coaching they need to like get through that. But really it's mostly about being heard and being organized enough in your brain to know the 3 things that are really the most important. And then we call people out when we're like, that has nothing to do with your goals. Like those are the things that everybody around you wants to do. Like, what are the 3 things that are your 3 things, right? So we do that on Mondays. On Fridays, we plan. We go deep into certain topics, so there's different, I believe that we can bring this idea of where we want to bring our energy and how we want to plan for it into all the different things. So we can do that for our home, for our work, for our spiritual practices, for our food. So we navigate between different topics from month to month. And then another cool thing that we do is we have lots, like you come to 3 a day, sometimes 4 co-working sessions so that as you commit to like, I'm going to do the sales page, you can come and it's almost like a yoga class. Like we ground you. Like, so we're like, just take a deep breath, sit down. What are you doing? You put that on a Post-it and you share it, right? And then you get timed. So somebody actually holds the time for you. So you just get to get lost.
Babysitting time. Like, yeah, like it's like homeroom with a teacher. So you sit down until
exactly
in a loving
so
way.
You're kind of doing it for yourself, and it's with a whole bunch of women doing hard things. So yeah, and so we do that. So it's really all about never having to. It's really all about learning how to follow through, and knowing that you don't have to be alone.
Create a container through which we can fall through, because it is through the things that we do all the time, but the hard things, you said, sitting with a bunch of women doing hard things. I procrastinate all of my hard things and then I hit a wall and then it's meltdown time. Like I do that all the time and it's not productive, nor efficient, not pretty to watch.
Well, and like most of us weren't, I mean, I'm watching my kid at college right now and I'm seeing how we're literally not taught, like we're not taught how to focus, and the world around us is not helping us to focus. We're not taught how to set goals that are different than the goals that are being set for us when we're, in certain circumstances. And we're definitely not taught to lead by our intuition, right? I mean, I feel like all of these things are becoming more and more. And so sometimes I look around my world and I'm like, of course the world works like this. But the second you really step out, it's like, no, like that's not, you can't walk into a board meeting and say like, intuitively, I think.
Well, I do.
I know. I mean, we all are.
I do that a lot. So Mia, if I am that woman who really, it's another year's ending, my New Year resolutions, it's October and it's just whatever I promised myself I was going to focus on hasn't happened. How do I work with you?
Yeah. So you just come to Plan Simple and we have lots of different ways in. You can just literally find the program Flow 365 and sign up right away. But we also have lots of different ways in. So I'm not exactly sure when this is going to air. But October around here is work month. So we have something called Work Week. We also have a free retreat for people in November that's all about that mindfulness piece. And it's called Make December Matter. So it's all about really creating space for those last 6 weeks.
Oh, I'm intrigued by that one. Is it a virtual retreat?
It is a virtual retreat. We've been doing virtual retreats, by the way, since way before COVID. So it's a little bit of a harder sell right now because I think more and more of us are wanting to be in person. But I do believe that especially for people who are balancing a lot of things, which is many women, it's still a really nice thing to be able to know how to retreat in your own space.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So anyway, that was a long way of saying we have a lot of free resources, and those are always a way in to see what it's like to be supported in this way, which is kind of different. Like we do teach about planning, but really, we're just trying to help you get your things done. We're just trying to help you actually be able to move and not feel like you're, going through mud all the time, which many of us can stay there for a long time.
Yeah. Well, Mia, thank you. I know it's dinner time and cooking time. My kids are my kid is getting hungry, and I know yours too.
The mom of four has one home. That's almost unbelievable.
Yeah, it's a weirder thing. We're like, what do we want to eat tonight? So where do people find you?
Yeah, just at our website, plansimple.com, I think is the best way. And you can get to everything from there.
You should definitely check out Mia's work. She's done not only beautiful work over the years, but impactful work with, I know, a lot of women. So thank you, Mia, for taking time and joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
What is feminine productivity? If you want to find out, you must listen to my episode with Mia Moran, founder of Plan Simple and Flow Planning Method. We talked all about the inside part of becoming productive in our lives. So don't miss it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Masters in Clarity. If you loved today's show, please subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review. Share this episode with 2 people in your world, and as a gift, Go to mastersinclarity.com/free to download free clarity resources. Join your host, Dolores Hirschman, next time to continue forging a clear path to your impactful success.